Hey everybody, Brendan here, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be playing a 10+5 game against Pikachu. So I'm going to play D4, and I'm going to play C4. I'm interested in trying something else that I don't really do as much, which is, first off, play D4, but also play the Queen's Gambit. So they play the Slav, the semi-Slav, or the Slav. Right now it's the Slav, it could be the semi-Slav later. And we could make things really boring with an exchange, and I'm really interested in doing that. Because there's some prep here that I probably will never use besides this video. So let's show what it looks like. And the idea here is, normally what you'll see is people will develop their knights and then go bishop f4 and then e3. But there's a really interesting variation where you skip all of that. You go bishop f4 first, and then you go bishop d3. And pretty much your idea is to force this bishop to do something immediately. Now, this is the critical position. If they don't find bishop g4, they tend to be worse. And a lot of people don't play bishop to g4 here. Some people do. Generally, you should. But if you don't, then you're going to find yourself having to play something like e6 later. And e6 is pretty unfortunate because the bishop is still inside of the pawn chain. So this would give white just a little something to play for. We'll have to see what they're thinking of here. They might not be as familiar with this variation. Yeah, we see a6. So I'm thinking of knight c3. Knight c3 looks quite decent. Nothing too wrong with it. There's also knight to d2. I'm trying to remember why knight to d2 could be better. But I'm not quite remembering. Knight to d2 could be good if I go knight to e2, because then this knight could go to f3. That is one small part. But one of the biggest reasons it's nice to bring the knight to c3 is when you do end up playing something like knight to e2, it's nice that that's actually covered. So let's go knight c3. I think this is just like it's just the more natural move to make. Of course, if knight c3 is available, you always have to consider it. And now bishop g4, there we go. So I'm going to play my knight to e2. I'm pretty happy about this. The idea is that eventually, with knight to e2 instead of knight to f3, we're able to kick this bishop on g4. We can go f3, maybe even g4 in the future, and we can gain some space on the king side. We have to be careful about all of these things too. But there's some pretty cool lines later. Maybe we'll see them, maybe we won't. I'm not really sure. So e6. Now they're threatening bishop to d6 to trade off this bishop. At least that's what they should be doing. So queen b3 looks quite decent. So does rook c1. But then it allows bishop to d6. I think it's really important to play queen to b3 right now. Yeah. And the nice part is we need to first look at moves like knight to a5. And I'm curious about how this will work, because after queen a4 check, b5 taking it. If they take back, we can take with the bishop. They're forced to go knight to d7 in order to not lose material. But looks like they could be weak with rook to c1 coming. We have to be careful about any movement of this knight, but if they ever move it like knight b7, we can always take on d7 at the end and then win this rook in the corner. So I don't think that would work. So it looks like queen a4 check would be quite nice for us, and if they have to go back with knight c6, then I like the idea. I think that successfully gives us a little something. Arguably, the knight belonged on d2 in this position because there's knight b4. So they went knight to a5. I wonder if they're going to go into things here with queen to a4. No, they're not. Okay. So that means rook to c1. I want to get this move in first, because if I can play it, then that means that there could be some stuff in the future. I'm unsure if it's going to lead to anything, but it could. For example, one interesting line is bishop d6 takes, queen takes, and then knight to b5. They don't have check, because I have knight c7 in the end. Oh, but they have knight d3. Interesting. But also you have to see that line of what if they just move back to d7. And that's where it's unlikely to actually lead to anything, unfortunately. But there is the option of bishop d6. And after trading, maybe considering f3. Interesting. I'm always looking at this diagonal. Generally, if you could do something before they castle, it could be a problem. But am I too early? I might be. I think I'm a little too early for that. But f3 looks nice. So does bishop g5, actually. Bishop g5 before everything, because it might actually force them into taking on e2. The idea behind bishop g5 is it's actually a very tricky one. This is something that I prepared in a slightly different position, but I think it works here just fine. Which is that if they castle, then I can go f3. They don't want to go bishop to f5, I believe, because we can take that, and then they have to take with the pawn, where d5 might be weak. But also, after f3, bishop h5, then I have knight f4, and I could try to go for the bishop pair. So I quite like this idea. It's a very sneaky one, because it doesn't look like we're going to be getting anything on the c file anymore. So switching lanes with this bishop g5, I think, could be helpful. It might not lead to anywhere, though. We'll have to see. So what I do know is generally when these bishop g5 moves are played, best move is just to take on e2. It's a very surprising thing to see, but yeah, I believe it's in a slightly different position, though. So we might see that it's actually not as good here for one reason or another. Yeah, so they took. And I think because of that, I'm just going to take with the bishop and just say we have the bishop pair, and I'm pretty happy about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking that way. So they castle. I could castle too. I'm not too afraid of them hunting down my bishop. And we do have the c-file, at least for a move or two. It's likely not going to mean anything, but we do have it. And the other nice thing is, because we're playing a exchange Slav, generally every pawn move matters in these positions quite a bit. So whether you've played h6 or g6, or whether you've played a6 or b6, it, especially on the queen side, actually affects the position a great deal. Generally, you're going to see a lot of piece movements and maneuvers instead of pawn movements. And with this a6, there's actually a square that's been weakened. Can you guess what square that is? So your first instinct might be the b6 square, and you're not wrong if you thought that. But a more accurate square that has been weakened as a result is actually the c5 square, because now whenever they would play b6, then a6 becomes weak, and usually that's just not really possible for them to get away with. So they played b5 immediately with the idea of knight a5 to potentially c4. I think I should probably go all the way back. I'm threatening knight takes b5. Actually, knight takes d5 as well. Oh, wait, no, knight takes d5, rook takes, and then bishop takes. And if I take there first, knight takes or knight takes will work. I would love to take here, but that's not working. So I think queen d1 is the best move. I don't like how knight b4 is with tempo. I don't think it's any good, but there's no reason for me to allow it or to think about it. Knight b5 is probably the biggest threat in the position, where I can take on c6. They could take on a2, but I have queen b3 winning b5 at the end. So they defend. Queen d2 looks okay, but I'm worried about b4 followed by knight to e4. There's also h4, h5. Even h3 doesn't look so silly. Just to bring the bishop back and control this diagonal, this could be useful. I could go back immediately, actually, because there's no knight h5. That's pretty important. I think I'm going to do that. And if they ever have knight h5 as an opportunity, I think I'd like to play h3. But the big idea here is eventually they're going to play something like rook c8, and I want to make sure that I have my fair share of this file. Let's just go h3 immediately. I think it's the safe option here. So it does feel like white has an advantage because of this bishop pair. It's a closed position, but generally, like, there's certain positions which are closed or open that feel one way or the other. This one, I would say, even though it's a closed position, it still has a fluid pawn structure, meaning that there's a ton of Sure, there's a ton of pawn breaks. There's a ton of pawn breaks possible. For example, e4 is still possible, a4 is still possible. Generally, when you find that these moves could be played, that's reason enough to start looking a bit more seriously at whether or not you should play them, or whether or not you should care about the bishop pair. So I like b3. b3, there's bishop to b4. I can go knight b1. This bishop, or this knight, could always reroute all the way to e5. Or just to d2. Again, it's just been misplaced the entire time on c3. So that's worth considering looking at afterwards. But I want to play b3 instead of a3 here because this knight getting to c4 is quite annoying to me. I don't know if it's the best, though. But in practice, it feels very, very frustrating to play against. So I think I would like to play b3. My big plan is to go rook c2, queen b1, and then like the other rook to c1 or something if I could. I'm always worried about bishop a3, though, at the right time, kicking away a rook. But knight b1 will kind of solve things there. That's why maybe the queen on b1 it could be a bad idea too, though. Yeah, so I'll just go rook c2. And if they play rook c6 or something, I'll just go knight b1. And this does not give them enough time to double up because their bishop will be hanging, which is key. They could go bishop to b4, but I think knight b1 anyways is quite strong. Yeah, knight b1. I'm attacking the bishop, very important. So they don't have time for rook c6 because we can always take on c6 first and then take the bishop. Right, so I quite like taking here. I would love to play knight to, or queen to d2. And after knight to e4, I'm not too worried because I could always bring my queen over to b2, and it's actually quite safe here on b2. It's a nice little square for it, and I'm just trying to get rook c1 in. Yeah, so queen to b2. I don't think there's any tactical issues with the queen going here. And eventually these bishops will matter, absolutely. You can imagine if we trade into some sort of endgame that a4 immediately opens up the side of the board and creates a weakness on a6. But it does matter that there's pawns on both sides of the board. When you have bishops, generally the reason they're good is because they can go to both sides. They can go from the king side to the queen side within a matter of a move, sometimes a second one. Whereas a knight, for example, let's just say it's on h6 for some reason. 1, 2, 3, 4 to reach one side of the board to the other. Whereas a bishop optimally could just do it in one move. So that's pretty important. I like rook to c1. I'm already noticing that maybe I could enter in the future on c7, or maybe there will be like a bishop to c7. I'm also potentially threatening something like rook c1, queen c2. It's unlikely because I think that they might have something like knight to a7 to defend their rook at the end. Try to take over the file like that. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this though. I'll go here. I could also go bishop to d3 to attack the knight, because if I ever take that, I think that's a pretty good exchange. I'm not really in a rush ever though. I think bringing the rook to c1 might be good right away. I feel like I should think though. Bishop to d3. There's no more knight b4 ever. That's a key part of this move. One of their ideas might be to bring this knight to b5. So they could try to target the weak c3 square. But that's also why I think I'm encouraged to play a move like rook to c1. Because now rook to c2 and queen c1 could be played. And I think that's enough to justify playing something like rook c2 and queen c1 here. Let's go bishop d3, just see if they do anything. Again, not really in a rush to do anything too crazy, but like this feels like it's always a threat. But I'm also trying to keep pressure with something like rook c2. And the reason I played this instead of something like okay, they played knight to d6. The reason I played bishop to d3 first is because, for example, if I played rook c2 and then they played knight a7, I might feel like I'm encouraged to trade. But bishop d3, knight a7 is just a mistake, because I can take and go queen c2, attack the knight, and also attack e4. I'm thinking of playing this move. This could actually be a really strong one. I'll have to see how it turns out. Because if knight a7 now, I don't think it's as good. Because I can take on d6 first. And then if they take on c2, I can take back, threatening h7. Yeah, I think I can take on d6 though. As we'll see. This is a key idea to win a pawn on h7. Because now they're going to be missing the fact that after rook takes on c8 at the end, I wanted to take on d6 first because they could have taken with this knight, which is not what I wanted to see. But after they recapture, I can take on c8, they have to take back, and then I can go queen to c2, and I'm attacking both the knight on c8 and the pawn on h7. Whereas if they take first, I can just take back, and I'm still threatening h7, and they still have to recapture. So they're losing a pawn by force here. So I can take this, go here, and I'm winning a pawn. I have to be a little bit careful. There are opposite color bishops, so it's still possible for me to end up getting into like a drawish position. But this is a situation where only one side is capable of winning. Take that. We'll just move all the way back. If this knight ever goes to any of these squares, we take it off the board immediately. And now it's time to develop our worst piece. Sometimes if you're stuck trying to find out what to do, what's your worst piece? How could you improve it? This knight on b1, it had its purpose, but now not so much. Let's keep going. Knight to e5 doesn't look so silly. Again, encouraging a trade where we keep an imbalance seems useful. This check doesn't seem so crazy, but also doesn't seem too useful either. You know what? A silly move. It looks like a silly move at first, but I really don't think it is g4. Just trying to go for space, but maybe they go e5. So bishop g6 or knight e1. I like knight e1. And the idea here is actually I might go g3. Interesting. What if I go bishop e2? No, let's go g3. I like g3 a lot. The reason why is because I'm actually looking at bringing this knight over to f4 at some point. Not immediately, but definitely down the line. Let's go h4. Just keep the same idea in the air. Just preventing g5. Okay. And do I ever go here? I don't think so. But this looks good. I could take with the g-pawn. There's also the surprisingly interesting move, queen b2. Where if they go queen c6 or something, I go a4. I think I'd be happy to... Oh, no, they go back to d6. Let's go bishop to e2 then. Bishop g4. I'm just a little worried of knight f4 too early, where maybe like I can't take with the e-pawn. And the g-pawn, it doesn't look bad, but just worried that it's not giving me the position that I might want. Interesting. If I push... This could open up a new line for me. Bishop takes. This doesn't feel right. I want to bring this knight over to d3 as soon as possible. I think I'm forced into taking. Or I should just massively consider it and then bring this knight to d3. Knight to f4 is kind of always a possibility. That knight of theirs isn't so amazing. King g2. Knight c6. Do they have any threats? Maybe bringing the knight to c3. But that's about it. I can't do that. Let's bring the bishop all the way back. And then f3. Maybe knight e5 on the way. I really want to prevent them getting to c3 if I can. I think that's one of the potential dangers that I have. Knight c5 looks dangerous. Knight e5 looks a little bit better. What about knight f2? That way I can go f4 and then g4, actually. which doesn't look so bad. And I can always play bishop takes instead. So I can actually give up the e4 square in a very nice way. f4 and then g4. And I'll take with the bishop instead. I'm attacking the pawn. They really should defend it. If they take, then it just makes it a guaranteed win. I think going here is good. I don't think I'm actually too worried about some sort of endgame now. Gotta be a little careful though. Let's bring this bishop back to f3. There we go. Still my best chance to win. Maybe bring this guy over to e5. Any exchanges I'm happy about. Any king and pawn ending I'm likely just winning because of that extra pawn. It just controls extra squares. It's going to be super nice. Let's start moving in a little bit. At f6 I just go king g5. And then king g6 maybe. Again, the big deal here is I'm just never scared of knight e4 check. Yeah, and now they're finding themselves slowly running out of moves. Maybe knight c5 or knight e5. Even bishop g4. Knight f2. How should I play this? Oh, let's get my knight to g6. It looks promising, actually. It might not lead to anything, but right now it's all about just trying to find some way to continue. Knight e8, I could just go back to g6. And now I'm looking at f5. F5 is now a serious maneuver, or just a pawn break. And I'm not sure how they answer it. Because I don't actually take there, I take on d5. Yeah. Looks like I'm making progress, which is nice. I think I could just take here. Oh, I can't. Can I? Wow. I have to go back. Okay. I thought I could take it for a second. That was a little sad. But I think it turns out okay. I think I'm happy. Still. Even still, I'm happy. Which is not a phrase I get to say much these days. F6? F6 has to be winning at this point, right? Because I also have bishop h5 if king f7. Now I can enter. That's a good move. Maybe I go here? No, I just don't like that they take it. I think I have to take. But then I'm worried about this position where knight e6 comes. Okay, let's go here. I'm threatening f7. There's still play. And now king f7. Is there anything here, man? king f7, there's knight h7, and... Wow. I don't want a draw. Because I believe I could win this. But how would I do that? King g5. Knight h7 check is fine for them. I need some sort of knight f4. Or something. Let's go back to g7. We go king here, and then they check, and then I go king e7. Let's give up the bishop. See if this works. I feel not so bad about this, actually. King h5, or h5's on the way. h4 is covered. I won. Wow. Right, yeah, I'm really curious in checking this now with the computer. So, yeah, I played this line where you intentionally avoid knight c3, knight f3. One of the big reasons is because, first off, it immediately forces black to find bishop g4. I think a6 was probably fine. Maybe I should have played something a little bit more accurate here. Like, actually, h3 could be decent here. Also, knight d2, again, could have been one of those moves that I should have chosen instead. And the reason why is because you tend to want to bring this knight to e2, and then... Yeah, like for example, bishop g4. Now you could play knight e2, or you could still play knight gf3, as the engine is saying. But I really like this idea of knight e2 and then forcing them to find bishop takes e2, which is not really a move you want to play. They ended up finding it in the game for a critical moment. So here, bishop g4, knight ge2, e6, and then I thought queen b3 would have been fine. I guess with a6 included, it's not. So, for example, the line that I'm used to is bishop g4, knight e2, e6, and then queen b3 here. Where after queen d7, you go knight c3. And you have to go bishop to e7 instead because obviously b7 is attacked. So I'm just a lot less familiar with these lines with a6 included, which is a really good idea. But it also does have a drawback. And I mentioned the drawback before, but I'll mention it again. One of the biggest drawbacks of playing an a6 at some point is it tends to actually weaken the c5 square a little bit. I think there was a Kramnik-Aronian game. I'll link it where Kramnik was playing as white and Aronian played an early a6, and they faced a lot of trouble because a knight was able to reroute to c5, and b6 just wasn't really on the cards ever, which is key. It's very important. But yeah, so here the idea is after queen d7, knight c3, bishop e7. I believe it's castles, and then bishop to g5. And then they need to find bishop e2 to maintain equality. You could go rook c8, but after f3, bishop h5 and knight g3. Was it this? Or was it h3? I think it was maybe h3. Wow, it's been a while. This is why I don't play these lines too much. Yeah, and then bishop h5 here, then knight f4. It's something like this. It's along the lines of like playing an h3 or an f3 with the idea of trying to get the bishop pair where you really don't want to take on e2. It just looks really, really passive. But you get the bishop pair as white, but like black is also kind of fine because you wasted a move with bishop f4 to g5. These are the big ideas. So... yeah, I'm leaking all of my prep that I was going to use in tournaments. And after a6, knight c3, bishop g4, knight e2 felt natural. I was a bit worried about knight f3 here now, especially because there was no knight on d2 anymore. Looks like I was right about that, or feeling that way. But queen b3 was not the right approach. Instead, castling is better. Which is fair, because it did run into knight a5, and I thought queen a4 would have been a problem, but it really wasn't. Because when they go back, I'm kind of encouraged to go back to b3, but that's a repetition. That's not what I'm looking for. And yeah, here bishop takes e2 is also given, which is, again, it's one of those moves that if you've studied these positions a little bit as black, you probably would play maybe even here without thinking too much. But it just feels really wrong to play something like bishop takes e2, especially unprovoked. But again, these ideas of f3, knight g3, or h3 are pretty serious. So queen b3, queen to a4 check. b5 is actually the top move. I'm really surprised by this because I thought maybe knight b5 worked. It doesn't like it. So the first thing I noticed was that this knight can't move, and this is what I wanted to mention in the game. So for example, h3 or rook c1. Yeah, rook c1. If you ever moved this knight, then bishop takes d7 just wins the game because you can't take it back without losing your rook. But also bishop c7 was a threat. e5 is the move. Wow. Bishop takes e5. And now it's defended, so you're not threatening bishop f7 anymore. Knight c4 works. Because bishop d7, you have bishop d7. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I know that these e5 moves pop up, but wow, that is a big miss. So knight c6, rook c1, bishop e7, bishop g5. Yeah, and bishop e2 is popping up as the top move again. Castling is also fine. But knight f4 looks a little dangerous. Same thing with like maybe even h3, bishop h5, and then knight f4. What I know is sometimes they can get away with this because the knight, like they win this bishop for this bishop out of it. Like b5, queen b3. Yeah, it's just not really working, huh? Because the queen's on a4. It's in a bad spot. The a6 move actually proves incredibly useful in these lines. So bishop takes e2, bishop takes e2. That was just a good find from my opponent. I think strategically it's the right call. But after b5, queen d1, again, it doesn't really feel like anything's wrong for black, but like it also does, doesn't it? Like we do have the bishop pair. It is a closed enough position, so it's a little justified. Like it's not completely out there yet. Like white has a lot of work to do to say anything. But like yeah, these positions are just really complicated. And I like playing them as white, but I hate playing them as black. So yeah, that's why I don't like the Slav. So queen b6 and bishop to f4. It likes bishop to d3 quite a bit. I wonder why. Why bishop to d3? Is it because bishop to b1 could be useful? Or is it because you might want your queen on e2 so you can go rook to c2? Bishop to d3, knight to a5, f4. Oh, I've seen something like this before. Okay. And the idea is that now knight e4 isn't as good in the future. But also, knight c4, queen to e2. I swear I've seen this in like a regular mainline semi-Slav where you play like these f4 moves, and I don't think it's for f5, it's for like rook f3, h3. I could be way off here. It is actually showing lines with f5, like queen d8, f5. I would never go into this, and I think the reason why is because when you see this line and you see taking on f5, I'm sure this is good for white. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure this is good. But you see this position and you see the weakness on e3, right? And you don't really visualize that d5 is weaker because, I mean, it's really far-fetched. But also it's not. It's really not as well. Like, it's a really cool idea, actually. So, don't mind me. Bishop to f4, rook to c8, h3. I thought this would just be a good move. Knight a5, b3. Again, I was never really scared of bishop to a3 because I thought rook c2 and knight b1, key idea. And yeah, knight b1 is one of the top moves, which is pretty important. Letting you take on c6 and get the file with rook c1 later with queen d2. So queen d2, knight e4, queen b2. And yeah, basically this whole game hinged on the fact that I was able to get... Oh wow, bishop to h4. Forcing rook to f1. Or you can go g3, but then g5. Which is incredibly messy. Which is, I think, maybe something black might even want. Wow, so here bishop d3 was better. First. And then if rook to c8, then it looks like you could take and go... okay, it says rook c1, knight d2 looks good too. Taking. This doesn't look so bad. Yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, rook c1. Rook c8. And yeah, I am pretty happy about this bishop d3 idea with knight d6. The idea of rook c2, like it's just such a silly idea, because if they play knight to b5 or if they play h6, they're fine. Also, queen b7 doesn't look so silly either. But also, like, are they fine? Because you get queen c1, you get... The thing is, even though it actually is true that you would get the move, let's see why it doesn't really matter. So here, queen c1, queen b7, and then like knight d2 or something. You could just go knight a7, I think. I don't think you have to look any further than this to see that you could play it like this. Oh, there's something here. Oh, okay, a7 is hanging, or a6 is hanging. So, okay, maybe a little bit more careful than that, but you get the idea. The file will be defended, and eventually the queen will get there. Generally, when the queens come off in these types of positions, sometimes there's something, especially like I mentioned before with the bishop on d3. It could be really nice and really useful, but sometimes also it's just too late and it's already just definitely a draw. So knight a7, yeah, super happy about bishop d6. It looks like bishop h7 is also a move, which is crazy. Takes, bishop takes, and the idea is if they take here, you can now take on c2 with check, and then maybe bishop c5, oh, bishop e7, obviously, sorry, is just winning a piece. So bishop h7 is another way to do it, but I didn't see that. Nobody, okay, I wouldn't say nobody plays like that. That's obviously within the same idea of bishop d6, but I just like this move quite a bit. Arguably that one's better, I think, because it offers more opportunities to avoid opposite color bishop positions, which is what I had. And I'm wondering if I made any mistakes here. So g6, knight d2, knight to f3, and then yeah, I went for knight e1, g3, h4. I just felt like maybe at some point I'd like to put my knight on f4, but I was kind of just waiting on it because I was worried that maybe something over here gets weak. I don't think it does, realistically. It's just sometimes when you're under pressure, you're a little worried about that. Oh, nope, this is not good. Okay. That's fair. I can understand why this might not be good. It sometimes, like, to me, it was hard to tell. It could have been really strong. It might not have been. But that's why I avoided it, is because I just couldn't really evaluate it so fast because 3 minutes left. Bishop to e2. Really happy about g6. I think g6 is the wrong approach, but I think maybe they were worried about h5. Maybe. I was thinking maybe knight f5, bring it to d6 or something, but yeah, maybe they were worried about h5 at some point. Because that would have been nice, and then like bring the knight to g6 or something. Even g4. Like, I was a little hesitant to play g4, but I was definitely looking at the idea. But yeah, g6 just encourages me to play on both sides. And although I don't have the bishop pair anymore, being up the pawn, having some sort of advantage like that definitely means that trying to play on both sides, or just generally trying to continue to advance things, not things as in pawns, but just the game itself is very important. f5, knight e1. This is not the right approach at all. Whoa. Wants queen e2, keeping the queens on. Or bishop f7. You know what's funny? I looked at bishop f7. I just wasn't sure how I felt about it. Not that move, sorry. I just wasn't sure how I felt about it in the scheme of things. Like, I was trying to make knight f4 work, but first off, king e7 is really annoying. Oh, you can take it? Because if they take here, you take on f5, and you're like, you have mate threats. Oh, yeah, this is what I mean. I did not see any of this, obviously. Wow, okay. Instead, knight e1 I thought was going to be useful. The queen trade I should have avoided, but that's an easy mistake, I think. Like, I was really worried about queen c3 in most positions. It really wants queen e2, by the way, not queen d2. But I was just worried about queen c3, just allowing them in. But I guess we get in first, and that's what matters more. Cool. Yeah, I think that's about it, unless I made a big mistake at the end. Maybe. Oh, yep. Lost a little bit of my advantage here. With the queen trade, sorry, yeah. f4 wasn't so great, maybe. I was happy with g4, though, with bishop takes. Again, if we get that... Whoa, king f7 is actually close to equal. Again, kind of surprising. But also, kind of no, not really. It was hard to continue here. Knight d3, king g4. I was really happy about king g4, though. And king g5. Yeah, the advantage is growing. So I think this was just wrong. Like, they should have left their knight on f6, maybe shuffled their king instead. Because the second I was able to get in, that was really annoying. Like, they could have gone king f7, even bishop e7. Maybe, like, at some points. Unless knight d3, then they can go back. But if king h4, and then they had bishop e7 available, maybe knight e4 check could have been a problem for me. Because any sort of opposite color bishop endings, I don't think I could win at all. But yeah, it's because king h4 was a move here. Yeah, so bishop e7 would have been nice. Like, king h4 now, then bishop e7 is a problem, yeah. Where they're always threatening discoveries. But yeah, it was just one of those rare instances where I could have actually jumped in. Because they don't have time for bishop e7. I can go here. Bishop e7, knight d3, knight e4. I mean, this still looks okay, but... Knight d3, king g4, king g5, king g6. And yeah, it looks like this is where things started to turn. But wow, I did not do a great job converting this. f5 was not the move. Bishop g3 was an excellent find. Yeah. Because, oh, e5 here. Huh. Yeah, because I can't take it, because I lose. I don't lose. I don't lose. If I go here, because I have this. Wow. Okay, we're getting in the weeds here. The real mistake was knight f8. And then... Looks like I was winning here as long as I did play king g6 or king f7, right? Yeah, king f7 was the move here to win the game, which is such a hard move to play because when you see knight g5 check, you think blunder, but you got to just think one move further, right? So king e7, if they take, then there's f7. You just win the game. But it's such a hard move to sometimes just play because again, you're giving up a piece, but of course, when you promote a pawn, that's way more important. So, yeah, we learned quite a bit this game. I learned quite a bit. I hope you guys thought some of the ideas were interesting, especially with this bishop takes e2 stuff. Remember, if you're a semi-Slav player, you know, you're going to have to take that knight a lot, even if you don't want to. But you're a semi-Slav player. You're used to a really bad bishop. If you could take it off the board early, you should be pretty happy about that too, okay? I'm just saying. Also, this a6 idea, I'll link a game, if I could find it, of the Aronian Kramnik game, where a6 was played a little early and then they had some troubles. Maybe I'll analyze it on the channel. I don't know. I'm trying to just do new things again, upload new stuff, because I've been in a creative rut. I've been trying to think of things to upload, so I'm just doing a rapid game just because. So if you guys made it this far, let me know if you want me to look at that Aronian Kramnik game. Cool. I guess that's going to be it. I love you guys. You're so cute. Okay. Goodbye.